Yeah, I will say that.
Because of the microphone.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much for inviting me and all of Norway to come to Brno. And if I understand it right, you all know about Norla, so then maybe my presentation is only 5 minutes. Anyway, my name is Andrine Pollen, and I work at Norla, which stands for Norwegian Literature Abroad. And we work to promote Norwegian books into other languages. The reason why we do this is, of course, because Norwegian is we are a very small country with only 5 million inhabitants. But still, we think that we have a lot of interesting aspects in our literature, and we would like to promote that into the rest of the world in order to collaborate with people in other countries. And it brings a lot of joy, both to us, because I think we have a lot of interesting literature to offer. We cooperate, of course, with a lot of institutions, both in Norway and abroad. And the reason why we can do this is, well, Norway is funded by the government, and that's the core in Norwegian literature and the literary system, that we have a strong support from the government to work on our own literature. And we also cooperate with similar organizations both within the Nordic countries and also in all of Europe with the NLIT network. Some of you are in that network all over Europe with institutions who work to promote literature from their own countries. And in Norway, we cooperate also with a lot of organizations for art and music and so on to help and promote Norwegian artists in all fields abroad. The most important thing that Norla does is, of course, the translation subsidy, which I will talk more about. Because if you buy a book from a Norwegian publisher or the rights to publish a book, of course the rights themselves may not be that expensive, but if it's a book volume 6 by Karl Ove Knausgård, which was like 1,000 pages, of course it costs enormous amount of money to translate that book. And that's when Norla's translation support is also important for books by authors who also will sell a lot. And that's the most important thing we do. And also, we participate in international book fairs. We travel, like here, to festivals and so on, to work and meet the network of international publishers. And also, if a foreign publisher would like to read a sample to be convinced if a book could work in their language, we can offer sample translations. And also, Norwegian agents may apply to Norla to have samples made, and we can also finance a sample of a book that they think have international potential. And also, of course, it's important for a translator who works to translate a Norwegian book that they can go to Norway to meet with the author or to see the landscape for themselves, like a translator in the Netherlands where everything is flat. It's very important to see how the landscape is if they are to describe a mountain, for instance. Or even a Danish translator who wants to see how a beach in Norway is different from Denmark. Or a cake which is described in a book. What kind of cake is this really, in order to be able to translate it. So that's when we can also offer travel grants. And we also offer that for foreign publishers who want to come to Norway to visit Norwegian publishing houses and hopefully buy rights to publish a Norwegian author. The translation subsidy, we have statistics going back to 2004, and that's when Norla merged with non-fiction, the non-fiction organization for Norwegian books. And as you see, the number of titles have increased. And as you see, in 2018, it was really a high peak, and that was because a lot of titles were translated before Norway was guest of honor at the Frankfurt Book Fair. So we did expect that the numbers would decrease after that, and then of course also the pandemic came. But still, the numbers are still high, and we do still promote and subsidize a lot of titles into all genres. We work both with fiction, non-fiction, and children's literature. Not so many, we don't support directly like cookbooks or books for, like creative books for hobbies and so on, but except from that, we do really support a wide variety of books. Also picture books. And as you see here, you see the numbers, I presume. So it's a lot of different authorships, and it's a lot of different titles, and it's also picture books. And for picture books, we can also give production cost subsidy. I won't stick to the numbers, but you get an idea. And the reason, I think I should talk to you a bit about the reason why we have so many books from Norway that may travel abroad. It's of course because of the Norwegian literary system, where we have this procurement scheme. And that means that if a Norwegian publisher, they can decide to publish a book, and they can apply for a scheme, a procurement scheme, and then the libraries will have books between 770 and 1,550 copies of a book will be bought and paid by the government and then distributed to different libraries. And that means that a publisher will be able to publish, for instance, poetry without going bankrupt, or at least not earn money by it. And that ensures a wide variety of books, because they can, of course, also publish criminal fiction, which maybe will sell a lot, but they also will be able to publish poetry and children's books and so on, that in a wide variety. And I think that's very important. And as you will see, I think this painting, which is in the House of Literature in Oslo, which was opened in 2007, I think that painting is very interesting because it says about a lot about the Norwegian literary system, I think. I think you have around 30 authors in this painting, made by Steffen Kverneland. And in the middle you have Jon Fosse, who has also been translated everywhere, so he's kind of the big chief. But then on the side, you see to the left, you see Kjartan Fløgstad, who you saw this morning. And you have a lot of different authors in different genres. And you see probably Jo Nesbø in the middle, down there. And you have Per Petterson, and there's only one author who has only written children books, and that's the lady in red here, Anne-Kat. Vestli, who is very famous in Norway for her children's books. And all the other authors are authors who write for adults, but almost half of them have written books for children as well. And I think that's very important in Norway, that an author is not only doing one thing. You also have like a very famous criminal fiction author. Her name is Karin Fossum, and she's really famous for her high-quality criminal fiction, but she made her debut as a poet. And I think Norwegian authors, they may explore different genres. They may try and experiment in different ways. Even Jo Nesbø has written books for children. Whereas in other countries, a lot of authors maybe only stick to one genre, especially if they write for adults. They will maybe think that writing for children is not so highly acknowledged. But I see a big exception in Roald Dahl, and he also, of course, his parents were Norwegians. But I don't know if that's a coincidence. But anyway, I think that's a very important thing about Norwegian literary system, and I think that's why it's so vivid and so experimental, and I think that's something we're very we earn a lot from that. So the authors you saw there, some of the well, what happened in the 1950s after World War II? As I said, Norway was a very small country, so we didn't have that much strong literature. Of course, we had Henrik Ibsen, and we had two other Nobel Prize laureates, Sigrid Undset and Knut Hamsun, and Bjørnstjerne Bjørnson. But except from that, not much Norwegian literature was, not that much was written. And that's why the government decided to start with this procurement scheme, to strengthen the Norwegian literature, because that was very important also to strengthen and ensure the Norwegian language. So that's why Norwegian literature became, it was possible for Norwegian authors to live from their writing, or at least get some financial support for it. And after a while, Norwegian authors started to get international acknowledgement as well. So Jostein Gaarde, of course, being the most important door opener in the 90s, when he wrote Sophie's World, which was actually in 1994 or 95 the most sold title in the world, which I still think is very, very impressive. And of course, you know all these other names who are also making a big impact all over the world. And like Jo Nesbø, there was a saying in a newspaper that a bookstore in England said that they would sell a book by him every 27th second in 2015. So he is also doing a big success. And Jostein Gaarde, Jon Fosse, Jo Nesbø, and Maja Lunde, all of them have also written books for children. When we work to promote Norwegian books, since Norway is so small, we're very happy to have also the royal family supporting us. You see here in the picture to the left, that was Mette-Marit and Crown Prince Haakon, who visited the royal Crown Prince couple in Sweden last year, and they also worked then to promote Norwegian books. So they visited a library in Stockholm, And we had a publishers event after, and that's also something we're very happy that they really work to help Norwegian literature come out all over the world. And the picture to the right is one of my favorite pictures of Margit, my boss. And the reason, she's always very calm, if you see here. And the reason why all the photographers were there was because, of course, Mette-Marit was coming her way on the train. This was in Frankfurt in 2019, before, when Norway was guest of honor. And I just think it's so, Margit just being so relaxed and all the hustle with the photographers behind her, I just think that's funny. Last year we were guest of honor at the Warsaw Book Fair. And that's another thing we do in Norla. We work to promote Norwegian authors, and we sold, or the bookstore sold 2,000 Norwegian books in, or translated into Polish within a few days. And at the book fair there were 90,000 visitors, and we had a lot of events going on. And we will next be guest of honor in Cairo next year, and then we'll be in Bologna in 2026. So now, after we were guest of honor in Frankfurt, where everything was so, we were so happy about the whole event through the whole year, and now we are up for anything. And last week we had a big event in Kløfta outside Oslo, and the thing is, in order to have all these books translated into other countries, of course we need translators. And I think it's still, we are so thankful and grateful and humble that there are actually translators living in Australia and Brazil, Argentina, Japan, Canada, US, all over Europe, and they translate from Norwegian into their own languages. And with help and support from the Norwegian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, they paid for all these translators, 150 translators coming from all over the world to Kløfta for 3 days, and all of them had the common language Norwegian. And it was great. We had 80 events for all the translators, and they met with a lot of their authors, and they met with each other, because sometimes they translate the same book into Hungarian and into Brazilian Portuguese and Japanese, and they can talk to each other and say, this is a difficult thing to translate, I don't know how to deal with that. And they will give each other advice and say how they, what kind of a solution they made. And that's, of course, a lot of fun for them. And also sometimes, some of you have been to Lillehamer, and sometimes we get an email saying, oh, I was in Jerusalem yesterday, and I met with Dana, and we were sitting, and me as a Russian, I came to Jerusalem, and we were sitting in a cafe and speaking Norwegian. And of course that's kind of funny, because Norwegian is a small language, but still spoken all over the world. And now we're here, which we are very happy about, of course, and I think it's amazing that you have 30 authors coming from Norway. To be honest, I thought that because July is kind of a holy vacation month in Norway, and everybody want to either be in their cabins in Norway or they want to go to the Mediterranean, or I thought it could be difficult to have them come to Central Europe, but you managed. And I understand very well when I know how well this Authors Reading Month is working. So we're happy to be here, and if you have any questions, you may always come to Norla. What we offer is we have a great network. We can give you advice on literature, and of course we do have a lot of financing support to give you. So if you have any questions, you may ask now.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much, Andrina, for this wonderful, kind words, but also for the wonderful work that Norla is doing for Norwegian literature, also for translators and for publishers. I have a few questions. So, in a way, my questions are kind of coming back to the questions that I asked the authors in this morning. So when you speak about literature, so what does Norla consider as literature? Because you said, so for instance, we don't translate cuisine, we don't translate like cooking books, we don't translate how-to books. But we've had examples of books that are more graphics, that are more visual, that are so. How do you see? What are the borders of literature? Okay. What is literature?
When I told you about the procurement scheme, there is kind of an advisory board that will check if a book has enough or high quality enough to be bought in. So it has to be of a certain quality, and if a book is accepted by the after it's been published, though it's no censorship. But if a book is qualified as that, the literary advisory board of Norla will also accept that. And we do also now we see a lot of more and more graphic novels coming, and for children's literature, of course, also we see that as very important that children are able to read a wide variety of books, and that's also why it's so important with the production subsidy, which is also given to Norwegian publishing houses when they want to publish a picture book. So in order to make a wide variety, I think that's what's very important.
And I really like what you pointed out about the kind of openness in genres, the fact that out of the 30 writers on that mural, a good half of them write not only for adults but also for young adults and children.
At least they have done it. Yeah.
And I think that's very important. Also coming back to the discussion that we had about democratization, and also as you said, Gunnar, about Sven said, we take the children as adults or as humans. It's not candidates for humanity, but they are there already. And I think that's a very interesting, a very important point. I have a question about the other word in your title. That's Norwegian, and because Norwegian, everything is very different, isn't it? Every author is very different. The way they see the vastness, the way they see the world. There is a lot of kind of topics that cross borders in themselves. So what is Norwegian as such?
Written in Norwegian language.
Okay, in one of Norway's languages.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. No, I'm just curious because I know when applying for grants, you want to know what is Norwegian, that you are eligible to it. Do you think that when you procure or promote Norwegian literature, there is something that you see as specific or unique that Norwegian literature does, apart from coming from...
It's very easy to have an example from Norwegian children's literature, I think, because as been said earlier today, we have really there are no taboos, and I think that's... so the only rule that is that there are no rules. You can really write about anything, And I think that makes Norwegian literature both brave and bold, because you can actually write and talk about any topic, and we think that's important.
Mm-hmm. I really appreciate that you spoke about the support that you give to translators with the travel grants and the importance to see the country and the culture. It's not just the mountains, but of course the range, the vastness. Matti this morning they spoke about the importance of the environment, of the place, and seeing it is crucial. So I have a question. That must be a lot of money involved. Where does Norla get its funding? So how is it funded? Because where the money comes from is important.
Mostly by the Ministry of Culture, but then we also cooperate closely with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and of course with a lot of all the embassies around the world. And so we get extra funding from there, and then also from the Ministry of how do you say, Nærings- og Fiskeridepartementet, commercial and or trade and fishing. Yeah. Okay.
No, that's important, because also I should say how this event is funded. It's funded from Norway bilateral funds to promote exchanges between Norway and other countries. And tomorrow is funded by the V4, the Visegrad funds, to promote Central European literature abroad. So just to clarify where we are and who's paying for this, because it's not just coming out of thin air. So I just wanted to ask that question.
And that's another thing I could mention too, that if a lot of festivals abroad, they will also approach the Norwegian embassies in their countries, and then they come to Norway, so to Norla. So the embassies abroad and Norla, we work together closely. So then, and we say there's a festival in Cheltenham, we'll have a Norwegian author there, and who should come, and we'll inform them about which books are to be published in that country, and so we cooperate closely all the time, and also the embassies then give funding, and Norla gives funding, and then they can invite the authors. Yeah.
Wonderful. So, Andrine, thank you very much for the presentation. Thank you. We have hit 4 o'clock. That means we have an hour for a break. You can get accommodated, for instance, if you haven't. And the reception starts at 5 o'clock. So it's in the yard where we had lunch. That starts around from 5 o'clock till 7. At 7 o'clock over here, there will be a 15-minute new film with live music done specially for this event. That's before tonight's reading for Kjartan Fløgstad. So come back for 5 o'clock for the yard. You will be also joined by about 50 students who are here for the Norwegian Academy from Masaryk University, and there will be the ambassador and some